Hey everyone, if you're just joining us, we're just still giving people a couple minutes to join in. We'll get started here in just a minute. Okay, it's a couple minutes after at this point. I think we can get this thing kicked off. Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Cameron. I am General Manager over at Integration Plumbers. I'll be running us through our webinar today about transitioning from Splunk to Oracle. Um, a little bit of housekeeping first. I just want to let everybody know that we do have a couple other people on from Integration Plumbers to help answer questions. So if you have anything while I'm going through this, please feel free to ask any questions, and we'll have somebody respond to you right away. Also, if there's any longer questions, I'll try and get to them here at the end. We are also recording this, so if you are interested in getting the recording to spread this out to the rest of your team, or just want to talk more after, we we're more than happy to have that discussion with you after the webinar. But let's kick it off. So, as I said, my name's Cameron from Integration Plumbers. Today, we're talking about transitioning from Splunk to Oracle OCI. Before we get into the meat of the webinar, I just want to do a quick introduction for those who don't know us. Integration Plumbers, we have been Oracle partners for the last 10 years. Our team has been strongly focused in the observability space, not only with Oracle, but with other partners as well. However, on the Oracle side, you may have seen us. We have the Postgres plugin for Enterprise Manager. We've also interacted with a lot of the other integration work on the Enterprise Manager side and OCI side. So um, if you have heard of us, that's probably where we are. But we have, as I mentioned, we've been working with many platforms. We obviously work with Oracle OCI, Oracle Enterprise Manager, but our team has experience with many monitoring and observability tools, including Splunk, Datadog, New Relic, Dynatrace, Sumo Logic, VMware's ARIA suite, and many more. I'm sure there's a lot, quite a few here I've already missed. Traditionally, we've been on the integration side. Um, our team's developed over 100 integrations across the entire stack, all the way down from the hardware for things like Cisco UCS and NetApp storage, databases like Oracle MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server. We hit all the major cloud technologies, obviously Oracle, but Google, AWS, Azure, ticketing services like ServiceNow and PagerDuty. And obviously I can't list all of them. Like there's a well over 100. So we're experts in not only the observability space, but also the integrations that go with them. Skip the slide here. That led us to our recent practice that we're building out. We built out a professional services organization because as we've continued our work through Oracle Observability and Management, we've seen a large number of customers who are transitioning who need assistance in different ways. So we've been working with some customers, and we decided in December to launch this as kind of like a public venture or something that's available to everybody else to help the customers get their workloads and observability in Oracle OCI. We do this through a number of different services. The first one being migration. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Going from old tools like Splunk to Oracle OCI. We also can help with implementation if you're doing a brand new set of monitoring and observability, and you just need help getting that all set up, or you have a very large amount of workloads that need to be, we have an extensive toolkit to help with deploying and configuring and setting up a large number of instances, so we can help with implementation. As I mentioned on the previous slide, our team has worked with this stuff for the better part of a decade. We're experts in a lot of third-party technologies. And so if there's just a world where you need help understanding what to monitor or what type of logs you want to collect or what you want to alert on or what is important for your dashboards, our team is also experts at customization. So I'd say those are our major three, but we can also help you with education and helping your team understand how to use O&M and how to, we can help with like getting you up to date with the latest because we work very closely with Oracle in our partnership. We're always up to date with the new features and everything that they release. And finally, um, if you're just looking for someone to make sure that your observability never goes down, that your tools are working, that you're getting alerts when something happens, and you need that like 24 by 7 help and support, we offer a comprehensive solution-based support as well. Okay, well, now I'm kind of get past the introduction to what we're all about. Let's talk about the webinar itself today. So we're talking about migrating from Splunk to Oracle OCI, specifically logging analytics today. And on our agenda, we're going to first just talk about the feasibility of transitioning because when we talk to customers, this is the first thing we want to make sure we discuss, which is, does it make sense for you to transition? If it does, then then we can get into what that actually looks like. So we'll first talk about the feasibility of transitioning. Then I'm going to do a small live demo of looking at some different queries and dashboarding in Splunk and show you how you can do that in OCI logging analytics. We're not going to go super deep today in OCI. We could spend multiple webinars just going into that. And honestly, Oracle already has. There's a lot of good resources and videos out there if you want to go deep into logging analytics. I also highly recommend the Oracle Live Labs for that. But my goal today is to show you if you're new and you're looking to transition from Splunk to OCI, how quickly you can get started and how easy it is for you to begin that journey. After the demo, we'll talk about some best steps for migration, and then we'll talk about any next steps and what that would look like to continue your work into your migration from Splunk to OCI logging analytics. Okay, so let's start with the feasibility of transitioning. When we work with somebody, we kind of start with four questions. And really the biggest one in the beginning, right, is this going to support you? Is using Oracle OCI logging analytics going to support your use cases? And that first support case, or that first use case, I mean, is are you already using Oracle OCI? Because if you're not using OCI, honestly, it probably doesn't make sense to move a majority of your tool set there. I do think that Oracle's tooling has a lot of strong benefits to use it, and we have seen some people who are using that just for their observability. But I think the major benefits start to come when you're already using Oracle OCI for other reasons in your environment. Maybe you've brought your database workloads up there. Maybe you're using other Oracle tooling in the cloud. Maybe you're running your app from in OCI. If you're already doing some of that, I think it already starts to make sense that you might want to bring observability there. And I would imagine most people on the call today are either already there or are already migrating some of their workloads into OCI or are at least thinking about it, right? That's why you'd be considering O&M as your main observability tool. So if you're already using OCI, then the next thing is to support all your other use cases. And this is going to be pretty unique to each individual customer. You're going to have different needs from observability. Maybe a majority of it is around logging. Maybe it's around stack monitoring. Maybe it's around alerting. And so we're going to take a look at I'll break down in a minute here, like a comparison matrix between what Splunk offers and what Oracle OCI offers. This question is a deeper question that usually this is again the kind of meat that we'll get into with a customer about talking about, hey, what are your use cases? What are you hoping to achieve? But this comparison matrix should at least give you a high view of the feature sets and how they compare. Then we'll talk about how Oracle OCI, if it can save you money. I think this is the next biggest question you have to ask yourself. Um, and if all three of those things hit, it supports your use cases, you're already in OCI, and you think it can save you money, then the final piece is, what will it take my team to learn a new tool? Because I know there's a lot of people out there who've been using Splunk for a long time. You may have one or more power users of Splunk in your environment. And the next question is, okay, how do we get them to pivot to Oracle OCI? And I think it'll be a little bit easier than you might guess. Okay, so let's break down some of these questions a little bit. The first one is supporting your use cases. So again, we have a little bit of a comparison matrix here. The first one talking about the query language. And I think when you talk to users of Splunk, this is a big piece that you talk about. They obviously have the SPL, and that's a very powerful thing that a lot of users really like. And it is. It's a very strong query, a way to query through your logs, to get information, to create dashboards, create alerts. Um, I'm just going to throw it out here. Oracle's is very, very similar. They have a SQL-inspired query language. I think if you're coming at both tools fresh, the SQL-inspired one might even be a little bit easier to pick up if you've already done some sort of work with like databases or anything like that. It maybe becomes a little bit more natural. But both at the end of the day are ways to query through your logs and get information. And honestly, they have a lot of similarities as well. They use different pipes to chain together commands. And when we get into the demo, I'll show you a couple of comparisons between queries. And I think you'll notice right away as well how similar these two languages can be. Both of them support dashboard and alerts. The only thing I'd like to say here with Oracle OCI, if you are using it for other services, you're probably already using something like the notification service or some sort of other alerting. Maybe you're using on one of their other services. The nice part about putting all of this into OCI is you are using a single tool set. And so if you already have, let's say, like a notification set up to send you an email when something happens, or you have it to go create a ServiceNow ticket when something happens, logging analytics is going to tie right into that as well. So you don't have to do that repetitive work across multiple tools. All of your like notification rules and things are going to be set up. And now you're just creating your alerts in logging analytics and tying it right into that. So around machine learning anomaly detection, both of them have it. In Splunk, it's a premium feature. The nice part about Oracle OCI, logging analytics is it's already built in. So you just get it as part of using OCI logging analytics. For the plugin ecosystem, I think this is something, again, this is maybe the second thing we always hear people say when we're talking about Splunk, and Splunk has such a large ecosystem, and rightfully so. They've kind of been one of the leaders in this space for the last 10 years or so. And because of that, when you're looking to monitor a certain log or specific thing, they usually have an integration for it. Either they supply it, or you can find a partner who has it, or the community's built something. Um, and so almost everything's out there. With OCI logging analytics, it's a newer tool, so there is a smaller ecosystem. I will say it's still a very large ecosystem, and they tend to have a stronger focus on Oracle products. So again, if you're using a lot of OCI and a lot of OCI services, I think it's a no-brainer. If you're using a lot of other things that you want to make sure you bring in, this is a good thing to check. And I will say this: we have it in it might be the next slide, a couple slides from here. If they don't have your integration, they do have a solution for it. So you're not out of luck. You don't have to stop and say, "Oh, I can't use logging analytics because they don't have it." Um, we'll talk about that here in just a second. On-premise support, Splunk offers it. They also have a SaaS-based solution. OCI obviously is going to be cloud native. It's in OCI. But the one thing I do want to highlight, right, is in a SaaS solution like Splunk, that would be going into their cloud. Your data, your logs is going into their cloud. Whereas something like OCI, logging analytics, this is your cloud. You control it. The logs are there. You can remove them, you can delete them, you can change them, you can set up your own policies. So although it is in the cloud, it's in your cloud. It's in essentially your local environment. And then we have a whole nother slide on pricing, so I won't get too much into it right now. But again, that's a major thing that comes up when we talk to people about Splunk. Is, there's different licensing tiers, and you get charged extra for premium support, and prices can change on you, and it can tend to be confusing, and it's hard to know what you're going to get billed month to month. Um, OCI makes it really easy. They have some ingestion-based tiers. They have a lot of ways to customize things to make sure that you aren't ever getting charged too much. And so the pricing, I think at least, tends to be a little bit easier on OCI. So one of the things we just talked about, right, is this integration gap with, I heard, I spent a minute on it, so I won't go too much over it again, but Splunk has this large ecosystem of tons of integrations. So almost anything you want, any logging you want, you're going to be able to find it. They have a large community. Somewhere you're going to be able to find that integration. Oracle, again, very strong native integrations for Oracle Cloud Services. They do have a number of other ones. In fact, in our demo today, we're going to look at like Nginx logs and Linux logs. But if there are a set of logs that you can't find, or maybe you have a custom application with custom logs that you want to bring into OCI, the way they've approached bringing in data is to have a large amount of ways to bring in like standardized information. So um, different like data collection frameworks, including like REST, just log files that you can upload, syslog, tools like FluentD and Prometheus, or Open Telemetry. The nice part about these, right, is you can use, if you put your logs into that, they're simple to upload. Again, you can also do just raw log files if you need to. So they have a lot of options that are a little bit broader. It is going to, you are going to have to do some customization to make sure you get the fields and everything set up the way you want them. But all of this is available. So even if you don't see an integration specifically for, let's say, like, hey, I have these set of logs that are my most important logs and I don't see it, um, if everything else looks positive about OCI, that should not slow you down because you can still do it with any of these data collection frameworks. Okay, so the next thing, can logging analytics save you money? So at this point, we talked about like, hey, does it make sense? Is it feasible for us to do it? Does it fit our use cases? Now we want to understand, hey, can it save us money? And again, this is going to be unique to your environment and how you're using Splunk right now and how you plan to use OCI. If you plan to put a lot more logs into OCI, maybe it won't work the same. But um, one of the biggest things we hear when we talk to people is just trying to get a handling on what their costs are in Splunk. If they want to add long-term retention of logs, it adds a significant amount of money. With OCI, um, their pricing is wide open. I actually put the link here right on the bottom if you want to take a screenshot of that, or again, it's as simple as kind of Googling like, hey, OCI logging analytics pricing, it'll be your first link. They give you 10 gigabits for free. Um, and you can use those to store any logs that you want. After that, they have three different tiers, and essentially it's how much data are you trying to store. And the further or the more amount of data that you store, the cheaper per unit that it gets. Obviously, it's going to get more expensive because you're storing more, but per unit, the price goes down as you store more. So they have a very defined storage tier. It's really easy to understand exactly what you're going to get charged. If you want to do something like, say, I always want to be on the first tier, I don't want to store more than that, or hey, maybe I only ever want the free tier and I ever want to get done with that. They have a lot of ability to be able to set up different rules that says like, hey, if I'm ever over 10 gigabytes, uh, immediately purge old logs so that I'm never over 10 gigabytes. So you can guarantee that you'll stay on these specific storage tiers and that you're not going to go higher in price. They also have a lot of filtering and ways to route your logs so you can basically ensure that you only have the logs that you care about. Maybe you don't want every log from a file. Maybe you just want the critical and warnings. Maybe you only want ones to deal with like invalid logins or all of that you're able to do with their log filtering. And so the other thing, if you're only going to try and limit how much logs you're bringing in, you can use these tools to also make sure that you're seeing the stuff that's important. Um, a bullet point I don't have on here too is they do have options for like archive storage or cold storage. If you do want to store your logs for a long time, that's kind of a little bit separate outside of their pricing, but they do have that option if you are looking like, hey, I just want to store everything. That's an option for you as well. And then finally, if you, and I think this is a big one, if you're already using OCI and you're using the universal credits to use your other services and you have some that you're not using on a monthly basis, you can use those on things like Oracle Logging Analytics. So this again is one of those things that if the more you're using OCI, I think the more it makes sense to bring your observability here because you can reuse those credits and again reduce your price on what you're spending on observability. Okay. The final piece we said we were going to talk about here when we're trying to justify if it makes sense to move tools is you have a team that's already been using Splunk, or maybe this doesn't necessarily have to be Splunk, it could be any other tool too, right? And there's always a cost to them having to learn a new tool. And I've seen this quite a bit with people where, especially with Splunk, because people who've used Splunk for a long time are power users and they know how to use it. The way I look at it and the way I've seen both tools is really at the end of the day, it's just a thing about understanding terminology. Because a lot of the things are going to be very similar in both environments. You just got to know what they're called. So, for example, data grouping, when you want to group your data in Splunk, they call that an index. In OCI logging analytics, that's a log group. Your log type or your log source, that's called a source type in Splunk. It's called a log source in OCI. The producer of the log, host or an entity. Um, Then we get to fields, and fields are a little bit different. This is, I'd say, maybe the one major difference between the two platforms. So with fields in Splunk, these are going to be extracted at search time. So you're going to upload your log, and then when you search, it's going to break everything down into fields, and then you can use those different fields to refine your search or create some sort of visualization. In Oracle and OCI, they prefer, or the way that they've built their platform is to create that structure at ingestion time. And so, what I mean by that is the fields are created when the log is uploaded, not on search. And I have a little bit more of a slide on this here in a minute. But really, the goal of this is that when you are running queries, you're going to get higher performance. Um, you can also make sure that fields are mapping across different types of logs. So if you say like, hey, I have these wildly different logs, but I always want to make sure categories related to this value, no matter what type of log I'm at, you can do that. It's not automatically created. You have a lot of control over that. So there's a lot of ability to do really cool things, but it is going to require you to do a little bit more work up front. Again, just some more terms here, right? There's the idea of tags and Splunk. There's entity properties and metadata um, OCI. We both already talked about searching. Obviously, there's SPL, search filters in Splunk, and the more SQL-based query that I talked about in OCI. Although, again, we will go and look at a couple of live queries, and they aren't that different when you look at both of them. They both support safe search, they both support building dashboards, and they both support alerting. But again, I do want to highlight, I know I already talked about it a little bit, but if you are using a lot of OCI services and you're already using things like notifications, this is going to tie right into it and reduce some of that work for you. Okay, so let's talk do a quick example here of like SPL versus OCI's query language. So I had an example here and it says, hey, we want to count the number of error logs over the past 24 hours and we want to group those by host. So earlier, as we talked, right, we have our index, we call them app logs. Let's say we're getting them from Nginx logs. So in Splunk, we say, all right, grab it from this index, grab it from this source. We only want to see errors and we want to see it negative 24 hours ago. Then we're going to pipe it and say, all right, now let's do a stats on this and count just by host, and let's sort the count. Um, and that's going to give you, uh, we're going to basically, again, we're going to get the total number per host. We're going to be able to see it. In OCI, we're going to search the source equals Nginx access logs, severity error. Again, stats, we're going to count, we're going to group by host. You can actually also write it like this. I'll show you that here in our demo. And then we're going to sort as well. So again, the languages are not going to end up being that different. Um, This is a huge slide with a ton of words on it, so I'm not going to try and go through all of this. But this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where the way that Oracle's designed logging analytics is with a strong emphasis on getting that structured setup at ingestion point. So you're going to set up these fields. They're going to be set up when the logs are uploaded. And that's going to be able, again, it's going to give you faster queries when you're trying to run things, but it's also going to give you those consistent fields. You're going to know exactly where things are set up and how they are set up, and you can make the fields be the names that you want them to be, and it adds to this better enrichment. And that helps with things too, like when you, let's say you want to do some sort of search with like regex across your logs. Um, you can know that like, hey, we set this field to be called user, even if it isn't necessarily called username. Maybe it's called like group name, but you want that to be called user. You can set that up and have that so that when you're continuing to work with your logs, that you can have that like unity and performance across all your different log sets. Okay, that has been a lot of slides, so I want to jump into a little bit of the demo here. As I mentioned, my goal here isn't to get super deep with logging analytics. If you are interested in something like that, or you have questions about some more enhanced features, I'll give you a link that you can contact us at the end. But I wanted to give the ability for you guys to see, hey, if I've never worked with OCI logging analytics, I've only worked with Splunk, what's that look like? And how can I get started quickly on it? And so what I did here today, I have Splunk Enterprise set up here. I actually went and just downloaded their tutorial data. So if you're using Splunk right now, you could go do this exact same thing, download these exact log files, upload them, run through the tutorial in Splunk, see exactly what the data looks like there. And then what we're going to do is look at what some of that data looks like in OCI as well. So in this tutorial data, they give us a whole bunch of different types of logs. They give us some Nginx logs, they give us Linux access logs, and they give us like a custom application log. And a lot of these logs are focused around a platform called Buttercup Games. In fact, if we take that in here, oop, gotta spell it right. And let's look at the last 30 days because I didn't upload that within the last 24 hours. Um, you'll see that we have a whole bunch of logs for this site called Buttercup Games, and they're essentially selling and making people like it's logging like the purchases of different types of games on this website. So you have 36,000 events here. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to upload that same exact data into logging analytics. Now, obviously, when you're working with Oracle Logging Analytics, you're going to probably want to set up some sort of agent with something that hits a log file that's going to continue to collect. We're not going to do that today. Today, we're just going to upload those files. So I'm going to click over here on administration. I'm going to click upload files, and we'll just call this our webinar logs. You can choose which compartment you want them in, what log group you want them in. We're just going to take the defaults here. I'm going to select files, and I'm going to select all of our logs. So again, these are the logs you can download from the Splunk tutorial data. And as I mentioned, we have a couple of different types of logs here. So I just selected the logs. I started to upload them. Here, they're going to want you to set your properties. And the big part that you're going to want to set here is the source. So the source, this is essentially telling you what type of what type of parser you want to use to make sure that these logs are parsed correctly. The source does some other things outside of that, but we won't get into everything today. So um, let's grab the secure logs to start with. One, two, three, four. We're going to say select properties, and these are Linux secure logs. So we'll type in Linux secure logs, we'll save, and we can see it sets the source of all these to Linux secure logs. Then we're going to grab our access logs next. These are Nginx access logs. We'll save those. And then we finally have this one called vendor sales. And if you remember, I mentioned when we were looking at Splunk that they had one custom app set of logs. So obviously, since it's a custom app, uh, Oracle's not going to have something out of the box ready to go for that. But what I did before the webinar is I created a new source called vendor sales logs that we can save this to. We're not going to get too much into what creating a new source looks like, but I will give you a quick glimpse at it after we upload these logs. So when we're going to click upload, it's going to submit all these to be uploaded. And we will click close. And we'll see if these are all in progress to upload. This only takes about a minute, so I probably if I refresh it'd already be done. But while we wait for the logs to upload, I'll go back to administration and I'm going to click on sources here. And as you see, they do have a button that you can say create source. So I'm going to click on our vendor sales log and I'll just show you what I created before the webinar a little bit here. And I'll click edit. And so when you create a source, as I mentioned, it does a whole bunch of things. It lets you tell you, hey, how do you want, what patterns do you want to include to pull these logs in? Are there excluded patterns? Do you want to do any sort of field enrichment or extended fields? I'm not going to get on all that right now. The big one is the parser. And this is basically telling you like, hey, when you have a log, how do you want to parse it? And so when I created my custom source, I also had to create a custom parser. Um, you can see I'm on the advanced tab right now because I'm editing it. But actually, when I created this, I went through the guided mode, which is really simple because it leads you through a lot of the regex and everything that you have to create without having to be a regec expert yourself. I'm definitely not a regex guru at all, but I was able to create this monster of a thing to break out my log and get all the data I want. So you essentially give it some sample logs, and these are what my custom app logs look like. It's a timestamp, the vendor ID, the code, and the account ID. And it's just a huge log of a bunch of those lines. And what I did is we took these four things, so the time, the vendor, the code, and the account ID, and we mapped them to fields down here. So I have a time field, a user ID field, an event code field, and an account field. And then this regex breaks this log into those fields. And if we go over to the parser test, we can see what those values look like. So I have my timestamp, I have my vendor ID, my code, and my account for each of those. So I just wanted to show you this quickly because I mentioned earlier, right? If Oracle doesn't necessarily have an integration that you want to use, I set this thing up probably in 15 minutes. It doesn't take very long for you to add your own custom log source if if you have like a custom app or if there's just something that you want to add yourself manually. Okay, so at this point, our log should be uploaded. So let's head back to our log explorer. Now, if you remember back in Splunk, I had chosen Buttercup Games. Let's reduce this from our 30,000 logs and let's just look for any logs that are having an error. So these are our tools this is our Buttercup Games logs that has this in the log file somewhere, but it's also saying that there's some sort of error. And here we can see we have 427 events. So let's try and get these same things in Oracle OCI. So to do that, I'm going to go up here, same kind of thing, right? We have our own search here. And I'm going to just type in Buttercup Games and error. Very similar to what we ran in Splunk. I have it, let's again go back in some time because I uploaded these a few days ago. And here we can see we have a whole a whole bunch of records, very similar to what we saw in Splunk. A graph of the logs, all of the log content below it. But if you look, instead of the 427, we actually have 481 records. And the reason for that is I have logging not only set up for the logs I uploaded, but right now I'm exploring all logs. And so it's also grabbing my OCI audit logs. So these are like OCI queries that I'm running and other things that I'm doing within my OCI environment with these Buttercup games. So if we want to remove those, we just have to add another pipe to our system here. So I'm going to say where log source equals nginx access logs. So we're going to add this pipe in here. And now you can see we only have the logs that we uploaded. Again, this would be very similar if we had other logs going on in that Splunk environment that had the word Buttercup Games in them. This is just because we're working OCI and I have OCI logging itself that we see those things. So that was pretty easy, right? I mean, it's very similar between the two. Let's take one more quick look at Splunk. I'll do another one that's a little more complicated. So let's say we want to find all purchases. So I'm going to say if the action is purchase and the type of game that we want to see is category ID is simulation. So we want to see all purchases simulation games in the last 30 days, and we see we have 230 or 273 events. So again, in Oracle, we're going to keep this Nginx log so we don't run into the same issue we just ran into with the OCI logs. We can remove this at the end, and then we're going to switch this over. We're going to say, give me the action of purchase and the category ID, ID of simulation. And we'll click run. And again, you can see that it came up just like it did in Splunk. So again, these logs are very, very similar, or the query languages are very, very similar. You'll see, notice like a little bit of syntax difference, but overall, the way you've worked in Splunk, you're going to be able to work just like that in OCI. Hopefully getting rid of some of that fear of what a tool transition would look like. Now, I do want to point out one thing. When I ran this search, you can see I did it like this, where I put these parentheses or the quotes around the whole thing. And what that means is it was searching the original log content for these things. So you can see where it found each of these in these logs. Now, most of the time, we don't want to search this the raw text of the log. We want to search for different fields. So if I extend this out here, you can see I have all sorts of fields that are available to me. And these fields were all provided out of the box by Oracle when I chose Nginx logs as my source. Now, unfortunately, this action to purchase and this category ID of simulation, those are unique to what I'm doing with my Nginx logs. Those aren't in every Nginx log. They're probably not in, what somebody else is doing down the street. So these are custom. And so what I did here before the webinar today, I set up a new field called category. And I did this through something called creating an extended field. And so what we can do here now is instead of searching for the raw text, I can say, I want to find category, and I can say, I want it to be simulation. So now instead of searching the text, I'm searching the actual field category. And if I hit run, we'll see it's no longer highlighting it in the raw text. It's actually grabbing the category for simulation. You can also see it's telling us the log source, that part of our query, it's also finding right here. Now I'll do a quick show you how we can create these extended fields, because this is again, when I talked during the slide deck, how important it is to do some of this stuff up front, and that's really the model or the way that Oracle wants you to do these things. It is important to try and create some of these extended fields or the data that you want to get out of the logs to do that up front. So to create something like an extended field, I'm going to go back to administration. I'm going to go back to our sources. And I'm going to select our Nginx access logs. And again, this is something that Oracle provides out of the box. This isn't something that I created manually for this webinar or anything, but I can click edit here. And again, here's the parser that, we were looking at parsers earlier. This is all ready for you to go. But what I did is I went over here and clicked it on extended fields. And so let me click edit on this to show you what this looks like. So an extended field is when you want to get more data out of a field that already exists. And so there's a field, if we looked a little bit closer at the log I was looking at called refer, and in refer, we have, it basically comes up with this huge content. Um, and so I copy pasted this in here, very similar to what we were doing earlier, right? Where we copied the logs in when we created our manual log. We copied a real value in here. And then doing that, we created some regex that said, hey, look for category ID equals. And so it finds it right here. And then within these brackets, it says the first thing within the brackets is going to be the name of your variable. So here, or the name of your field. So this is going to be category. Our field's going to be called category. Then we're going to do a colon, and we're going to say the regex to get how much else. And so for that, it's going to find everything up to an ampersand. So it says, hey, everything after the equals and before the ampersand, that's going to be our value for the field category. And then we have some regex to finish off the string. And then you could test your definition. It will say, yep, your regex is correct. And it will say, this is what your value looks like with the log that you provided me. So again, this creates, is it a way where out of the box, they might provide you with a ton of fields that are really, really useful, but you want some more. And you can do that by creating these extended fields. Now, the reason, if we go back to our log explorer, the reason I did that instead of just searching the text is because I'm going to want to do some actions on the category field. And the reason I'm going to want to do that is because I now want to imitate or replicate a little bit of what we were doing in a Splunk dashboard. So I'm going to go back to Splunk really quick. I'm going to click on dashboards. You see we have this Buttercup Games dashboard. And again, if this is something you want to replicate at home, the tutorial data here will run you through this, and you can create this exact dashboard by running through all of that. So the one I wanted to try and replicate is this top left widget, where we looked at the top purchases by category. So here we got all of our purchase logs, and we said, how do we break these down into different categories? And we added it to a dashboard. So this is what I wanted to try and replicate. So to be able to do that in OCI, I needed category to be its own field. So let's talk about how we want to build this source. So we're going to keep action as purchase, right? Because we're looking for purchases. And we're going to remove this part where we want the category to be simulation, because now we want all categories of purchases. We'll make sure that we're still only looking at the Nginx access logs. And let's just start, I guess, with that. So here we can see we went from like our 400 some records to 5,000 records, because now we have the purchases for all the other products as well. Now, what we're going to do is, instead of grouping these as log records, what we want to do is we're going to do some other data manipulation on these. And so what we're going to first do is we're going to say, I want stats. That means we're going to do some sort of evaluation on the logs that we got. Very similar, again, to what Splunk is doing. And what I want to grab is the count, so the total count, and then we're going to say by category. So category is that field we created. Again, why we needed it to be a field. And we're going to run that. And you can see Oracle will automatically find the best visualization in this case, which is a pie chart. However, if you did want to change it, you can go back and click one of these. And it's going to automatically show you all of your records, in very similar to what we saw with Splunk. Now, if we wanted it to be exactly like Splunk, we did only look at successful purchases in Splunk. And so one of the things we want to make sure we do here is maybe look at some of our additional fields. And we have a status field here. And this is just from me looking at the logs earlier. So we're going to say, and we want our status to be a 200, right? We wanted to make sure that this went through successfully, that this isn't like the user didn't hit a 404 or anything when they tried to make the purchase. So right now we have 2,800 logs. Once we run this, it did remove a number of logs that had failed, or a number of logs we have where someone failed to purchase. Now, the last thing I would do before trying to add this to a dashboard or anything like that is count isn't very helpful if I'm looking at something like this. So what I want to do is I want to rename this. And so in Oracle, again, very similar to what you may have seen in Splunk, we can put the as keyword. I'm going to call this purchases. And when I run, now this field is called purchases. A little bit more, it makes a little bit more sense for a user who's looking at this for the first time. Now, if I want to add this to a dashboard, I'm going to say actions, and I'm going to say save as, and this is going to save this query as a saved search. So I'll call this purchases by category. I'll say to add this to a dashboard, I'll create a new dashboard, and I will call this just the webinar dashboard. And we'll click save. You can see up here already, it gave us a new name for our search because the search is now saved. We can go back to it whenever we want. And if we go over to our dashboards, we can see we have this new webinar dashboard and our data is over here. It's very similar to what we were seeing when we looked at the Splunk dashboard. Now, I want to run through one more quick one. I know we're getting close to the end here, so I'm gonna go through this one a little bit quick. So I'm gonna create a new search because I don't want to overwrite the search we were just looking at. And so far, we've been really working with these purchases logs, and that's why I want to do one more really quick, just to show you an example with some different logs. Um, so in this case, let's grab all logs, and we're going to pipe, and we're going to say where the log source equals the Linux secure logs. So in this case, I want to look, we got to change our time frame. There we go. So these Linux secure logs, these are going to be more security based. Another very common use case for logging analytics. We can see here we have a lot of things like login failed or authentication failures, sessions being closed, things like that. So um, again, a more like security based use case here. Now, one of the things that I want to do first is instead of showing this data in like a grouping here of basically dates that these things came in and grouping them by just that they are part of this Linux secure logs. I want to group them by something that's maybe a little more helpful. So I'm going to use the log or the visualization drop down over here. I'm going to expand this to see all the fields that we have. And I'm going to grab this host IP for the client. I want to group these by seeing the client that's being used on all of these. And now we can see something that's maybe a little bit more useful. It's a histogram of showing me what's logged in and what IPs are being hit, or sorry, are trying to log in and failing the most. The other thing I want to do is let's limit this to only when the user got denied. If we expand here, we can look at a whole bunch of different options that we have for fields, but I want this one specifically where the security result equals denied. So instead of just grabbing all logs, let's do security result equals denied. Now, finally, again, for visualization purposes, this is great. We're getting better data, but this isn't exactly what I wanted to look at. This isn't easy. We could try the pie chart again. But again, there's a lot of data here and not necessarily something that's useful. But if we use, let's say, this geostats view, now we can see something that's maybe a little bit more useful to us, like a security standpoint. Where are these logins coming from? How often are they hitting? We have the bigger or the more colorful circles when it's hitting often. And again, as we did before, log records isn't very useful, so let's call these logins so we know that these are the total number of logins. And just like before, we'll save this. We'll say save as. I'll give it the search name. We'll call this failed logins. We'll add it to our dashboard. We'll say existing dashboard this time, and we'll add it to our webinar dashboard. We'll save. And if we refresh our dashboard page, we'll see we got our second widget here. And of course, just like you could in Splunk, you can go in here. They have a lot of different things you can do when you start editing these dashboards, but you can, let's say we want to give this one some more real estate. We can save that and we can manipulate the dashboard in any way that we really want to. So let me go back to our deck here. Okay, so again, we didn't hit anything super deep in the demo, but again, I want to show you how quick and easy it is to go from Splunk over into OCI. And I hope I was able to show you a little bit of that today with how similar the queries look, how easy it was to replicate one of the dashboard widgets. Um, as far as having your team be able to learn this platform and be able to adjust going from Splunk to OCI, um, the initial piece should be fairly simple. As you get into some more of the rich features of OCI, I think you're also going to see a lot of additional things that you can do that are really powerful and really are actually going to expand on your capability of what you're doing with your logs today. So let's quick jump into migration best practices. When we start talking to people about migration, we go through the questions that we talked about at the beginning of the webinar. But then the next thing we talk about is like, hey, what's the best practice? How do you pivot from one to the other? And the first is we always want to identify your primary log sources. We we want to make sure from the very beginning that your workloads that are the most important are the ones that we're identifying first. And it seems pretty straightforward and pretty obvious, but oftentimes people will focus on getting the low-hanging fruit first or the easy things first. At that point, you could be halfway through your transition before you identify something major that's going to be an issue. So we want to start off with your priority log sources. Then we're going to do a phase migration. We're going to work with both OCI and Splunk in parallel. And the real big benefit is to kind of do exactly what I did in the demo today. You're going to be able to compare things from on the left and the right. You're going to look at your dashboards. You're going to make sure that you can recreate them. You're going to make sure that when an alert's going off in Splunk, it's going off also in OCI, so that when you do finally do the full pivot or the full transition, you know that your OCI log analytics is ready to go. The next thing is considering using those open source frameworks or toolkits like we talked about in the beginning, OpenTelemetry, Prometheus, things like that. The reason we recommend this is if you already have those going into your data of Splunk, and then you want to um, transition to OCI, you can do so that both tools are using the exact same data. You don't have any integration layer in between that could be manipulating or changing things. Both of them are sending the exact same data to both, so you can do a better comparison side by side. Now, of course, after all this is done, we want to make sure you're running validations, making sure everything's good. Um, I know I've hit this a few times, both in the demo and in the deck before, but set up those ingestion rules early. The sooner you can get to that, the better off you're going to be. The more value you're going to get out of OCI log analytics. You're going to be able to do cooler stuff. So making sure to spend that time and make sure the log is parsed out with the fields that you want it to have is always a good thing to make sure that you're doing during migration. When you're getting close to wrapping up, make sure you have a training plan in place to get the rest of your team up to speed, so that they're familiar and know how to use the tool. And then finally, if you're struggling with all of this, or it feels like a lot, or you you just need someone with a little more expertise get help, and that's what we're here for. I know I said at the beginning, but I do want to just do a quick throwback to the things that we're there to help you with. We have a lot of different services that we can help with. I think one of the biggest value adds we can add is our ability to customize your workflows, your dashboards, your alerts. As I mentioned, we have a whole team of really with a lot of experts who've been in this space for a long time, and not only with the platforms, but with the third-party sources as well. So we can, outside of just helping you set up what you need or what you have out of the box, we're also are happy to give recommendations on new alerts to add or things that are going to reduce noise. Um, I think that's a big value add that we can help. Obviously, we talked this entire webinar about migration, so we can help with that migration from existing platforms like Splunk. I think we're in a unique position where we're one of the few people who have expertise across all of these platforms that can really help with that. And then any ongoing support or training that your team may need, we're happy to help with as well. So just to wrap up, like first I want to just say thanks for everyone who attended. I appreciate your time today. If you are looking to migrate, this is kind of again the highlights here, right? Ask yourself what's the feasibility that you can do the transition. Check to make sure logging analytics can save you money because again, there's a lot of ways that I think it could. Do that transition in parallel and validate all your tests to make sure that everything's working right. Train your team. And then, of course, if you need help, reach out to Integration Plumbers to help you make the transition easier. If you do want to talk to us, I throw out our website here. It's integrationplumbers.io. We have a contact page. You can click on it there, or you can just go to /contact. We're happy to set up a workshop to work with your whole team on things, do any sort of training. We're also happy to set up a one-on-one call to talk to you individually about your migration or your environment. We can do a guided proof of concept. We can just have a discussion about our services. Just reach out, let us know what you're looking at. Let us know if you have questions. If there's anything specific you want to talk about, we're happy to help. And that is it for me. Again, I want to say thank you. I appreciate everyone who attended. If there are any questions out there, I'm happy to answer them. I know we're right up against the hour. I ended up spending a little more time on the demo than I think I planned, but I do appreciate your time today. Thank you. All right.
And I think that's it, Cam. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you.